Some news is coming in. Let's go straight to details of the hijab showdown. The hearing is underway in court right now. The petitioner said the High Court misused Karnataka government by Karnataka government. Petitioner says Muslim girls forced to remove hijab. Schools forcing children to remove hijab. Petitioner is seeking clarity on the order of the Karnataka government. Nolan Pinto is getting us more details on that story. The hearing once again has resumed. Take us through the details, Nolan, of what is being said in court right now by the petitioners.
Well, Sneha, in fact, the Karnataka High Court has resumed hearing, and initially itself, you have the senior advocate who actually came out with a request, in fact, yesterday, Advocate Mohammed Tahir. He says that the order passed by the court is misused by the state. In fact, he was the one, on behalf of the petitioners, requested the court to actually postpone the hearing till after the elections that are taking place now across India. He says Muslim girls are forced to remove their hijab, and he gives an example. Says in Gulbarga or Kalburgi, government officials went to an Urdu school and forced the teachers and the students to remove their hijab. He also goes on to add that the order is getting misused by the authorities. I have presented the media reports. Now, this is when the Karnataka High Court says we will ask the respondents to get instructions on this, and the Advocate General says that the affidavit is vague. That is when the Karnataka High Court asks who filed the affidavit, and he goes on to say that that is Advocate Tahir, that I have filed the affidavit. Now, it is a rule that councils cannot file affidavits, and that is why the Karnataka High Court stated that councils cannot file an affidavit. That will be a misconduct. And Tahir, in fact, the Advocate Tahir says that the order is getting misused by authorities. Have presented all the media reports, and the Karnataka High Court goes on to add that we will ask the respondents to get instructions on this. As of now, Senior Advocate Devdutt Kamath has begun his submissions. He actually sought to make a clarification regarding what really happened yesterday. Towards the end, Sneha, there was an issue with public order, the translation in the Kannada word and how it was translated over here. So basically, they have been discussing on that. Kamath proceeds to state that the word Sarvajanika Suvyavaste does not mean public order. He says the official Kannada translation of the constitution uses this word, Sarvajanika Suvyavaste, for public order. And he says, I'm surprised the state made this argument. Now, the Karnataka High Court then goes on to ask him, saying that the words in the government order cannot be read like words in a statute. So this argument goes on. Finally, he says that the word, in fact, he clarifies that the state has used the word in the constitution. The word has to be given the same meaning. Public order, as per constitution in Kannada, is Sarvajanika Suvyavaste. Interestingly, this is used nine times in the constitution. So he says he rests. He does not want to argue much more on this. So basically, this is what's happening as of now.
All right, be with us, Nolan. I'm also going to go to Nagarjun, who's getting us more details on that story as well. Nagarjun, the very fact, and we saw the videos of them go completely viral, of women, teachers, young girls having to take off their hijab while entering the school premises. That certainly is something that the petitioners have brought up in court. Also politically, it's a big issue, but in court, that matter has been brought up today.
Well, that is true. In the last 2 days, how in schools, when the 10th standard schools were opened, people did still come in hijab, both teachers and students in Shimoga, in Mandya, in Gulbarga, Bidar, in Udupi as well. But then the school authorities made sure that the hijab was removed at the gate. They were not even allowed to enter, to give an empty classroom where they could change their clothes and then enter the classroom. But then because of a lot of media attention to, the school authorities woke up and they said you have to remove it at the gate itself. So we saw a lot of visuals coming on where people were removing the hijab at the entrance of the school along, and that's what was brought to the notice of the bench today, that at least let them enter and change inside. And it's very humiliating to remove clothes or hijab in front of the gate in public, is what the argument was also. We'll have to wait and see if the government also said that it was brought to the notice of the Chief Minister. They said that they might give out SOP, likely that there might be a classroom for changing, empty classroom for changing, or some other mechanism might be put up, not making sure that the women and the students remove their hijab or the burqa that they are wearing at the gate itself. So the government also is contemplating with the Education Minister or Chief Minister in a team huddle right now that they might come up with an SOP by the end of the day to make sure that there is some protocol followed. That today, in fact, many Congress MLAs also went and met the Chief Minister regarding the same, that don't let our women change clothes or remove clothes at the gate. Don't let them ask to remove hijab at the gate. It's quite humiliating for a human. Forget anyone, it's a Muslim or Hindu. It's humiliating with cameras looking at them and public looking at them, and the teachers and the school authorities forcing the students, saying you remove hijab at the gate and only then you can enter the classroom. And that's the word they put into the Chief Minister. Chief Minister also said that he's considering the SOPs. Maybe tomorrow or today there might be a clear-cut SOP from the government as well about the whole changing of clothes or removing of hijab before they enter the classroom.
Nabila is also getting asked more details on that story. Nabila, I just want to take off from what Nagarjun in fact was telling us, and that was, rather ugly. And this is played out in court as well. What we saw yesterday, just not a matter of politics, but about basic human right and basic human respect. Young girls having to take off their hijab. This is so much confusion on the ground. What really are you seeing today, given that the hearing essentially continues in this matter?
Right, in Udupi where I'm at, Sneha, we're looking at most of the colleges and schools complying with the interim order, where it says that those schools and colleges which have preset guidelines must not be disturbed. Basically, if you want to enter a school or college that already says uniformity is mandatory, which means no hijab, then don't force those institutions to allow you in until the court verdict is out. But in Udupi, we saw one of the institutions, an Urdu college, a government Urdu college, which in fact asked for their own students who were earlier wearing the hijab not to wear the hijab until the court's verdict is out. So it appears that many of the institutions, government-run institutions predominantly, are very worried that there could be some kind of backlash if they allow their students to wear hijab inside classrooms until the court's verdict is out. So they're all following the interim order, and it seems like this is passed on to a few of the institutions that also allowed hijab in the past. So many schools, we heard Nagarjun also mention a bunch of schools in Kodagu, 43 girls were sent back today. In Gadag, a bunch of girls were sent back. In Kalaburgi, there were a few girls who were sent back from the institutions. So this has had a ripple effect, and it seems like the animosity and this tension and the kind of confusion that's trickling on ground is really affecting young girls who are going to schools to be educated, unfortunately being sent back. They're being dragged into this entire political slugfest here, and that's what's really disappointing, which has now been raised in court as well. Arguments on that is currently underway, Sneha.
Yes, be with us. I'm just going to go back again to Nolan for more on that, where Advocate Kamath is talking about whether there are any other jurisdictions apart from Muslim countries who have gone into the question, Nolan, of the hijab. We did some fantastic homework. Just take us through the arguments that he is making right now.
Well, in fact, he's actually talking about Article 25, subsection 2. He says that basically yesterday they had actually focused on that particular issue, and I just want to actually tell what he says. He says, yes. He said, yesterday I was asked whether reform in Article 25.2 can apply to an essential religious practice. In fact, they had argued a lot on this, and he says that is answered by the Supreme Court. He's referring to the Sardar Saidna Taher case, in which the Supreme Court struck down a Bombay law which prohibited excommunication from a community on petitions by the Bora members. The Supreme Court said, if this is an essential practice, it must be upheld. Now, he quotes from the judgment, Sneha. He says, laws providing for social welfare and reform not intended to enable the legislature to reform a religion out of existence or identity. Then he goes on to explain, saying that if it is the essence of the religion, neither under Articles 25.2a or b, it can be curtailed, subject to, of course, public order, morality or health. And now there's this conversation which is going on between Advocate Kamath and the High Court. He says that the SCR reports do not give paragraphs. The High Court says that it's only an authoritative publication. He also goes on to once more read from the Sardar Saidna judgment. He says, some amount of guidance is there in the judgment regarding the power of the state is to be exercised. State can regulate deleterious practices. Here in this case, that is the hijab he's talking about, is an innocuous practice. So these are the arguments that are currently going on.
Yes, and the question, Nolan, that the court is asking whether South Africa is a theocratic state. There's a parallel that has been drawn. Take us to what the court essentially is saying and what Advocate Kamath has to say while giving examples of countries that have similar religious paradigm and how courts have responded in similar arguments in similar cases.
Well, in fact, I'll get back to that. I'm just getting information, Sneha, that he's actually hammering on the essence of Article 25. He's saying that it protects the practice of faith, but it's not mere display of religious identity. He explains what he used to do when he was in school. He says, when I was in school and college, I used to wear the Rudraksha. It was not to display my religious identity. It was a practice of faith because it gave me security. We see many judges and senior lawyers wearing such customary things. And then he says, to counter that, if somebody wears a shawl, you will have to show that it is a display of religious identity alone, or is it something more? If it is sanctioned by Hinduism, by our Vedas or Upanishads, then the court is duty bound to protect it. Then he says it cannot be that by the Education Act you can curb religious beliefs. Otherwise, it is a very dangerous proposition. State will say there is an act, and based on that, we will curb somebody's freedom.
All right, Nolan, getting us all of those details. Do continue to be with us. We're getting you minute by minute updates from the Karnataka High Court with the hearing again is underway. Nabila continues to be with us, Nagarjun as well. As far as the situation, Nagarjun, is concerned, today in the state of Karnataka, yesterday, like I said, were ugly scenes that we witnessed. What about the kind of confusion? Are we seeing similar scenes today as well? Or is there some clarity at least in the handful of districts where this issue really is playing out in institutes, in educational institutes?
Sneha, there is total confusion across Karnataka as well, because remember, many institutions were allowing hijab before the controversy also. They were allowing hijab for the students to be worn inside the classrooms. Even certain institutions like them are not allowing students to enter the campus with the hijab because of the fear of the society, fear of the public, and they don't have the proper order from the interim order of the High Court. It has gone viral where the messages are like, High Court has said there'll be no hijab allowed. So people who had allowed also are fearing because they don't have proper information. The percolation in the rural area of the High Court order has not gone well. People still don't know, neither has there a clarification of the government, neither has there been clarification from the organization. It is left completely up to the students, parents and the school management, where the information is being twisted, turned to everyone's favor, and this complete chaos. So that's the reason why the government is likely to put up a SOP or a protocol about how the students will have to enter if there is hijab, if there is no hijab, and what does the interim order of the High Court say,
we are
and what
still
exactly
awaiting
should
those
be done
SOPs,
if the institution
from the government. We'll just come back to you for more. Meanwhile, if we have more news coming in, let's go straight to that. Big controversy after BJP Karnataka puts out details of 5 minor girls who are petitioners in the hijab case. BJP Karnataka tweets addresses of 5 minor girls. Sena MP Priyanka Chaturvedi demands action. Priyanka Chaturvedi tweets saying that shameless tagging at BJP for Karnataka tweets the addresses of the minor girls in order to attack the opposition. Do you realize how insensitive, sick and pathetic this is? I request DGP Karnataka and Twitter India to take action and take down the tweet. Also seek at Government of India Meiti intervention. I demand at NCPCR also to take this up immediately. This is a criminal act. Priyanka Chaturvedi has in fact put out that tweet and she's now joining us. Priyanka Chaturvedi, a big concern here where these names and addresses of these minor girls have been put out. I think your tweet really spells it out for us.
It's extremely shameful and condemnable that we have a party, a political party, which feels no shame in, outing the names and addresses of minors. This is a criminal offence, and I have asked NCPCR, because I have zero expectation from Ministry of Child and Women Welfare, But I also expect Methi to step in and get them to take down this tweet. This is absolutely condemnable, and I will continue to say this kind of harassment is unbecoming. While argument for uniform is one thing, but this kind of harassment is another thing altogether. And BJP, which is in the center as well as this part of the state government, is doing things like this. I think everyone should be up in arms and protesting this.
Yes, also this raises a question on how then will the state ensure the safety of these young women at the end of the day? Their addresses are out. This is an extremely sensitive issue. It has polarized. We've also seen that happen. And we've seen how things played out just a few days ago when it came to countering these women who then chose to wear a hijab and then go to their respective schools and colleges.
No, harassment is absolutely unacceptable. Following the responsibility of uniform is another argument we can have. Unfortunately, the political parties are breaching that particular thin line that exists. The matter is in the court. The court is hearing this. And for people to use saffron shawls, which are a sacred color for the Hindu religion, and using words which are sacred for Hinduism, what they're doing is hooliganism, and this is absolutely condemnable. No Hindutva party, no Hinduism, no Hindu human would support something like this. Harassment of girls.
What sort of action do you expect authorities to take against the BJP unit of Karnataka for doing what they've done today?
I would want police to take suo motu action and file an FIR. First, NCPCR filing, asking for an FIR to be filed, and those behind putting out this tweet needs to be, looked into. Whoever the IT officials are, or office bearers of Karnataka should be put behind bars for this kind of indulging in criminal activity. This is criminal. I repeat, it's criminal.
Do you think this has the potential to further disturb law and order situation in the state of Karnataka? And also, given that their addresses are now out, the state should be ensuring the security of these petitioners.
Absolutely. It is the job of the state government to ensure that law and order is maintained. There is a sensitive issue being discussed in the High Court. And for them to not even offer any kind of security to some issue like this speaks and reeks of the hypocrisy that Bharatiya Janata Party is all about.
Is the BJP, in fact, the Twitter handle of BJP Karnataka has said that there are 5 of the students involved in the hijab row. They're minors. Don't Congress leaders Sonia, Rahul and Priyanka have any guilt for using minor girls, is what they're saying, putting out the details of 5 of these young women. And as per the details that the BJP has put out, all of them are below the age of 18 or just 18 years of age. Priyanka Chaturvedi, how should opposition parties also take it up, including yours? How do you plan to now take on the BJP for doing what they've done?
What is shameful is the politics behind a situation which has to be dealt with through law and order and through High Court. What is happening is religious groups interfering in this. What is happening is 2 national parties interfering in this and making it about their politics. Little caring that these are young minds, young children who are going to be divided because of the sheer hate that the agenda that is being carried out. And I think every political party should actually seek within what they're ending up doing to a nation which was aspiring for growth but is now looking at only hate and divisiveness.
Priyanka Chaturvedi, thank you for getting us your perspective on that story. Remember, she's from the Shiv Sena and she had put out a tweet essentially talking about how this has been done by the BJP, the Karnataka unit essentially, and how she is now in fact asking the relevant authorities here to take action against BJP for Karnataka, the Twitter handle that has put out the details. More breaking news coming in. This again has got to do with the hijab showdown. The hearing is underway in High Court. The petitioner said High Court order misused by the Karnataka government. Petitioner says Muslim girls forced to remove hijab. Petitioner also saying schools are forcing kids to remove hijab. Seeking clarity on the Karnataka government order. Nolan Pinto continues to be with us. Also Nagarjun Dwarkanath and so does Nabila Jamal. I'm going to go across to Nolan about this one point, Nolan, and do explain this to us about this kind of clarity that the petitioners are seeking vis-a-vis the Karnataka order, and talking about how the High Court order in fact has been misused rather by the Karnataka government.
Well, in fact, when the proceedings began today, Advocate Mohammed Tahir stated that the order passed by the court is being misused by the state. And he says that Muslim girls are forced to remove their hijab. He also goes on to add that with an example that in Gulbarga, government officials went to an Urdu school and forced the teachers and students to remove the hijab. This is what he says. Then he goes on to add that the order is getting misused by authorities. I have presented all the media reports. Now, that is when the Advocate General, the Chief Justice, in fact, the High Court asked, we will ask the respondents to get instructions on this. The Advocate General enters this conversation and says the affidavit is vague. That is when the High Court wants to know who filed this particular affidavit, and Advocate Tahir says that he filed the affidavit, to which the High Court says that the council cannot file the affidavit. That will be misconduct. But Advocate Tahir goes on to argue, stating that the order is getting misused by the authorities. I have presented all the media reports. So he filed his affidavit based on media reports of what is happening to girls from the community. He claims that they are being harassed. However, the High Court says that we will ask the respondents to get instructions on this. The Advocate General continues to claim that the affidavit filed by Advocate Tahir is absolutely vague. So this is exactly what happened towards the beginning, and after which Senior Advocate Devdutt Kamath began his submissions.
Yes, be with us. We are continuing to track that story from the High Court where this matter is being heard. In fact, this hearing has been going on for days together. I'm going to go across now to Nabila for more on that. Nabila, also do sum up the arguments that were made in court yesterday and before that when it comes to this very sensitive issue. Of course, the court, a larger bench, has been hearing this matter.
Right, in court yesterday there was a lot of talk about who sets the rules of uniformity. In fact, there were arguments that Kamath made about the CDC, which is the College Development Committee, who have set guidelines. They framed guidelines there which oversteps your rights, oversteps Article 25 under the Constitution, giving you rights to religious freedom and choice, freedom of choice. Now, here, in fact, the Advocate Kamath spoke extensively of how the CDC is actually deciding on public order, about the fact that public order is a state subject and it was for the state to decide on how to handle and contain public order. Instead, the responsibility was shoved on the College Development Committee to come up with guidelines only to beat public order and to try and contain the confusion. So that was not right. Furthermore, dwelling into, of course, the finer details on what does the hijab really mean in Islam, and is it an essential practice? But today what we hear right from the start of the hearing today is, of course, the kind of repercussions the interim order has had, and that's very important to note here because we're getting reactions from across the country. Several celebrities also now jumping in. Jwala Gatta in the latest is now condemned many of the school girls who were sent out of classrooms, saying don't drag kids into ugly politics, and that's what we see. Very sorry scenes outside many schools in Karnataka, Sneha, where very disappointing. I'm talking about students as young as 12, as young as 10, 12, 13, who are being sent out of classrooms because the college management are really worried. They're scared that they will receive a kind of backlash if at all they encourage these girls to come inside class with the hijab.
Okay.
Again, it's a clear divide between institutions which were allowing for hijab earlier and those who weren't. Now it seems like all fall under the same pit.
All right, Nabila, we'll come back to you, Nolan, and also Nagarjun for more details on that story as we continue to keep a close eye on all those developments from the Karnataka High Court when it comes to the controversial hijab matter. With that, it's time for a quick break here. Much more news on the other side.